interesting section. We're looking at evolution, and I will be building very heavily on the concept of evolution and what it is and how, this as a spell Okay, so my internet has gone off on my phone, on my laptop, so I've moved very quickly to what we have here on Zoom. I'm just hoping that this is also live on Facebook. In other words, the Facebook connectors have not been lost this morning. If they have, that would be extremely unfortunate. So the network that I thought was better actually is worse. I'm switching back to the other network meantime. So let's continue, and I hope, like I said, that people on Facebook are capturing this. But if they're not, then obviously a deep apology to them for that. So. Okay, so I hope you can hear me. If you can hear me, just let me know if you can hear me. And also those of you that are watching on Facebook, if they're still on. Okay, I'm hoping that they're still on. If you are, then that'll be very good. I just hope you are there on Facebook. So on my system here, I know I'm back again to recording. And what I've done is I've just put both so that if one of them misbehaves, I'm still able to go to the other. So anyway, let's go on. So like is by definition a change over time in one or more inherited traits found in populations of organisms. Inherited traits are particularly distinguishing characteristics, including an anatomical, biochemical, or behavioral characteristics that are passed on from one generation to the next. So evolution may occur when there is a variation of inherited traits within that particular population. Now, the major sources of such variations are mutations, genetic recombination, and gene flow, okay? Evolution has led to the diversification of all living organisms from common ancestors, which are described by Charles Darwin as endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful. So now there are basically four common mechanisms of evolution. The first mechanism is something called natural selection, a process which there is a differential survival and or, whoopsie daisies, I'm telling you, I just have to switch this off so that we continue. I'm just hoping that over here, you guys are still able to hear me. Okay, yes, you are. All right, so like I was saying, it is a differential that occurs from one inherited trait to another. So that's the first one. It's called natural selection. Okay, and then the second one is genetic drift. Now the process of that is one where there is random changes to the proportions of two or more inherited traits within a population. So that's called genetic drift. The third is mutation, which is a permanent change in a DNA sequence. So remember, genetic drift is just a variation which is random or seems random, whereas with mutation, it's permanent, okay? And then the fourth is gene flow, okay? Which is the incorporation of genes from one population to another. So check this out: natural selection, genetic drift, mutation, gene flow. These are the four divisions whereby a single ancestral species split is visible in anatomical, genetic, or other similarities between groups of organisms, geographical distribution of related species, the fossil records, and recorded genetic changes in living organisms over many. The same feel, the same, flow of what's going on. So I'm extremely sorry for the inconvenience that has been caused because of these breaks that keep coming. Let me just check, but I think even on Facebook, the signal has gone. So we obviously are not able to get much going over there either. Let me just there. Just a minute. Okay. Yeah, so like I said, I've seen even on Facebook that the signal went, though it's telling me it's live. So if it's live, then it means it's going on as we speak. Yeah, it's still live. Okay, well, for whatever it's worth, let me try for one more time. If we're going to have a drop again, then obviously I'll have no choice but to cut it off. When I'm editing that on Facebook, I would chop off all these parts. So let me try and see if we can make progress one more time. If it fails, sorry, we'll just stop it. So like I said, there are four common mechanisms of evolution: natural selection, genetic drift, gene flow, and mutation. I also noted that it has been thought to occur in multiple ways, such as one static state to another. This is basically the background of what evolution is according to the teachers. Now, the scientific study of evolution started in the mid-19th century. It was developed by Charles Darwin and Alfred Wallace in the 1858. In the 20th century, Darwinian theories of evolution were combined with genetics, paleontology, and systematics, which culminated into a union of ideas known as modern evolutionary synthesis. So that's a very important factor to take into account. The synthesis became a major principle of biology as it provided a coherent and unifying explanation for the history and diversity of life on Earth. So that's a very, very critical factor to take into account. Even whenever you're looking at the issue of evolution, this is the story behind this particular space and this particular discipline that we have all these various sections that operate, and they are the ones that form the trend. Now, having said that, let's see if we can now jump into the spell. So what exactly is the Okay, according to this, it's telling me that it's still live on Facebook, which is very interesting. I thought we are done, like we're gone completely. We're not even on Facebook anymore. So my signal has come back on again on Facebook. I really do apologize. So what I want to do, I want to find out from you. Let me get some feedback from you. Those of you who are still live on the call, I can see a number of you are live here on Zoom. And then I'm also seeing a number of you live on Facebook. So what I want to do is get your feedback. Tell me, should I continue or can we postpone to next week, Saturday? So that's what I want your feedback. So let me know right now in the comment boxes. You can comment here on the chat on Zoom. Okay, there you are. So Chris, please postpone. Rita is saying I postpone. Great. Chris says it's live. Chris, should I postpone? Because there's been such a great deal of interruptions, and obviously it has broken the flow of what we're doing. On Facebook as well, I'm just waiting to see the comments as well. Somebody saying you can try one more time. Okay, that's two people saying try one more time. Carlos says postpone. So we're still balanced, still on an equal footing. I also admit that even for me, from where I stand, I am definitely tempted to postpone to next week. We've had a very interesting experience when it comes to our connectivity this morning. It's been anything but smooth. So two people are saying try, two people are saying cancel. Faith is also saying try. So three people are saying try. I'm just trying to see if I can get on Facebook here on my phone. The local network has been beyond terrible, so I'm failing to connect even with my phone onto the internet here. So my phone has really just gone mad. I'm not getting a live signal. Let me go over on my computer and see what I get over here. If I can get comments and see what people are saying. Should we go on or should we postpone? So let's see what they say. Okay. All right, let's see. I'm on it now. Just a minute, and we see what they say. Okay, so I've got 16 people live. So immediately. Okay, so I've got 16 people live on Facebook. Let me see my comments here. Continue, try once again. Okay, a lot of people are commenting and saying we try once more. Okay, so let's give it a shot. Backed by popular demand. But it's been a very frustrating. So this is a third provider I'm on now, and this one seems very stable. So they have won my heart. Let's just see how we go with this. And should this be able to work, then we'll pick it up from there and continue. Certainly my phone has gone to the dogs. There's nothing going on over there. So let's continue over here. All right, one more time. Okay, so let me give this a shot. Let's see how we do. I pray that we won't have an interruption again. So what's the spell of evolution? I gave you a bit of a background. Sorry, let me just take note of the time. We are how many minutes into the presentation? Because that's the one that's going to give us a signal when I'm editing this. We are, how many minutes? We are, I'm looking for the time on this thing. Okay, we're about 4 minutes. That signal doesn't help. Let me just check on Facebook. We are, all right, I've got the time signal. So I'll be able to use that later. So let's go on. Like I told you, the trend currently is that the spell is that we came out of nowhere, okay? According to the propagators of this particular teaching, they say that we started from the Big Bang, Earth was formed, and then came from the primordial soup. From this was formed the first carbon-based life forms, amoeba, which evolved over millions of years into what we see now. They happen by chance, and there is no greater or intelligent designer or God behind it all. And since life came by itself, it shall evolve into something else in the future. In short, only the fittest survive, and we are all broken down to the simplest genes, and it has always been about genes. Those with the best and the fittest pass them on, and those that are weak die out. Also explains the reason for pain, death, and hurt, the horrors and deeds of man, his evil incapacity to be an instigator of death and destruction. It is all about strongest genes surviving into the next generation. There is no room for a divine God here. That's basically the position and the spell that has been taught. So let's begin to look at some antidotes very, very quickly. There can only be two positions here. One being to accept the word of God as being inerrant and true, or throw it out the window on the basis of the fact that it contains errors and contradictions. And in view of objectivity, I will outline the scientific reasons countering evolution and proposing creation. Okay? Firstly, it has not been observed. That's the first big key. So remember these things as you take notes. Number one, it has not been observed. So it is thus a theory, okay? Especially those proposing the origin of man being a descendant of an ape. That's difficult to prove, okay? Further, the evidence is highly unreliable, hence the existence of what paleontologists call the missing link, which is the connection between ape-like human being or ape-like creatures, that's your Homo habilis and the Neanderthal, and then the modern man, Homo sapiens. This is worsened by the fact that radiocarbon dating may not give the most accurate dating for placement in terms of history as to precisely when these creatures lived. So the dates can only be roughly estimated, of course, in thousands and thousands of years. It is also highly improbable, third reason, because the law of entropy, and for me, ladies and gentlemen, this is the deepest, most interesting part. The law of entropy and many other natural laws dictate that all systems move from a state of order to chaos. They never move from disorder into order. It's impossible. In short, evolution cannot create complex structures. The structures always degenerate unless there's an external factor at work. Okay, the crown of existence is man, and evolution cannot explain any of these things. And let me name them to you, and I'll begin to break each one properly. Listen to this one very carefully. This for me is the crux. This for me is the ultimate, because this is the one that's going to really give you, as a propagator of the belief of evolution, of creation, the power to discuss and create a case with those who believe in evolution. The first thing that cannot be explained is consciousness. Okay, that's the ability to be sentient. Okay, the second one that cannot be explained is free will, the ability to make choices based on your own feelings and understanding, not instinct. The third is hominid intelligence. The fourth is instincts. The fifth is emotions. The sixth is metamorphosis. The seventh is photosynthesis, interesting. The eighth is homosexuality. Yep. That's actually flying in the face of evolution. We'll talk about it. The ninth is music. The 10th is language. The 11th is religion. The 12th is morality, and the 13th is altruism. So we're going to go into each one of these. I find them very, very interesting topics. When we go into each one, you will be absolutely blown away by what I'm going to show you today. Okay, so let's break them down one after the other. And then when we reach 9, I'll have to stop so that we allow for Q&A. So number one is consciousness. So what is consciousness? It is the state of being awake and aware of what is going on around you. Okay, this would be also termed as being sentient. What does that mean? That means capable of feeling or perception. A very, very unique state of being. Okay, so what's the dilemma exactly? Why is this a big deal? Here's the dilemma. When exactly, hear me out, when exactly did inanimate cells and blobs of tissue become conscious? And what caused that? Did these cells just decide to become sentient or individual? How and why did that happen? Ladies and gentlemen, consciousness is one of the most difficult things to explain in evolution, because at what point did that happen? When did cells become self-aware? When did they take on a consciousness to say, I am me and they are they? When did that process take place? At what point in the so-called evolutionary path did this occurrence take place? When did people become aware that they are individuals? See, when babies are born, they're kind of sentient in a way, but not really. They really begin to be self-aware and aware of the environment about a month or two after birth. Because now they realize, first of all, once they're born, they know they can scream and they get attention. So already that's a form of sentience. But as they grow, they become more and more sentient, more and more individual, more and more distinctly unique. My friends, that's very difficult to explain from the angle of survival of the fittest, from the angle of senseless cells that just think about survival like animals. We are so unique and so different. That factor alone is one of the most interesting factors I know when it comes to trying to explain the idea of sentience and the idea of self-awareness. Did you know, just kind of carrying this one a bit further, did you know that this is the one point that is very interesting when it comes to AI? AI, which is artificial intelligence, is at a place right now where it's operating on something called narrow AI. Narrow AI is confined to a particular set of operations, usually within a given system. AI is software that programs itself, or software that, that programs itself, software that develops itself. That's basically, or writes itself. That's what AI is. What is interesting about AI is it still operates on the premise of conditions given by its creators, which is your human beings who write the code. But they are all believing that with the intelligence and ability to build, not intelligence, with the capacity to calculate and crunch numbers at the rate it's crunching numbers, we are going to reach a singularity in life or in time when the machines are going to become sentient. That means they'll become self-aware. That's a very interesting point to watch. When will that happen? When we hit general AI. When the AI leaps out of the confines where it is right now, which is narrow AI, sitting in algorithms on computer programs, data collection. It'll move from that to a place where it becomes sentient. If that happens, it means the computers now will be capable of feeling and perception, and that will completely change everything we know about life. That's an interesting topic for another day. Let's go to number 2, which is free will. Okay, free will is the ability to act or make choices as a free and autonomous being, and not solely as a result of compulsion or predestination. This is one of the most interesting components as well when it comes to understanding exactly what's going on in the space of consciousness and humanity. This is a tough nut to explain because of the randomness of free will. Unlike consciousness, it also implies something that exists within the bodies of animals and humans that cannot be measured, yet is there. The common term would be the ghost in the machine. So the question is, what exactly is it? What makes me make my own free will? You know, the Bible carries this concept very far. It says that when God created man, he literally made him an independent living soul. So that soul is independent of God. That soul can make its own decisions and can decide what it wants to do. Angels were also created with the same ability within them. And free will is very interesting because it's unpredictable, it's unprogrammable. People can choose to do whatever they want to do. And that's why we are in many ways responsible for what we decide to do in life, because that choice to make a decision is with us. From a purely scientific evolutionary standpoint, it is detrimental to the progress of creation. They don't even call it creation, they call it evolution. It is detrimental to the survival of the species, because in the survival of the species, it makes more sense to operate from a hive mind than to operate from a free will mind. That's what makes, the whole concept of humanity very unique and different. So that's your second dilemma that many of these people cannot understand. The third one, which I think is even more interesting, is the hominid intelligence. Okay, so hominid intelligence is defined as intelligence that is superior to other animals, but specifically tied to hominids, from where we get Homo sapiens. Okay, this intelligence has been linked to brain size in proportion to the body, though highly debated, and the capacity for the higher cognitive functions such as language and music. All right, so as one can tell, the dilemma now. Firstly, the jury is still out on precisely how apes became human beings and why. So the missing link. There was even a time when there was a lie going around called the Piltdown Man. He was called the missing link. He was a fraud because somebody was so interested in creating a so-called fraudulent proof that there was this creature that was the link between apes and humans. And, you know, from an anthropological standpoint and eugenics, the idea that white people are evolved and a higher race gained a lot of ground in this study. So there was a lot of pseudoscience, there was a lot of wrong teaching, and they believed that whites were the epitome of creation. No, not creation, but of evolution, and blacks were close to the missing link. You should go look at the write-ups and material around that. It's ridiculous. So of course, later it was proven that scientific racism is a load of hogwash. So it was ditched quietly. But the point is, there is no justification or explanation for these things. Further, what evolutionary function would art, for example, and music play in the survival of the species? Why would somebody sit there and be listening to music and be moved to a point of tears? What has that got to do with evolutionary survival? Nothing. Why would somebody stand in front of a piece of art, like a statue or a drawing, and be completely mesmerized? What has that got to do with the advancement of the species through evolution? None whatsoever. So you find that this hominid intelligence is a very interesting dilemma that evolutionaries cannot explain. Number 4, instincts. These are an inborn pattern of behavior characteristic of species and shaped by biological necessities such as survival and reproduction. A powerful impulse that feels natural rather than reasoned. Very interesting. So what's the dilemma? Where precisely within an organism are they stored? Would it be in the genetic code? In what way is this information deciphered? And you know, this is a deep one, ladies and gentlemen. This one is one of the most powerful dilemmas that exist in the whole space, because most of these people cannot explain. It's a serious I don't know. That's the only answer. You cannot explain why instinct exists in creatures. Where does it come from? Where is it stored in the machine? Where does it sit? What component of the machine does it sit? How is it deciphered from DNA? How is it carried from generation to generation? Let's go to the biggest dilemma. This one for me is my favorite one. In fact, I think for me, this is the most powerful one that really leaves every evolutionary supporter, what's the word? It leaves every evolutionary supporter bamboozled. It's called the DNA RNA debacle. The DNA RNA debacle. Now, a lot of you have been hearing about RNA because of the vaccines. They contain something called mRNA, but I'm not going into that. M being manipulatable or changeable RNA. Okay, so let's go into that. You see, the DNA RNA, it is the substance that carries an organism's genetic information. So that's what DNA is, okay? It is a nucleic acid molecule in the form of a twisted double helix strand that is the major component of chromosomes and carries genetic information. DNA, which is found in all living organisms except some viruses, reproduces itself and is the means by which hereditary characteristics like eye color, shape of head, and things like that pass from one generation to the next. Now, the information is recorded in a long sequence of 4 types of amino acids, nucleotides as they're called, and in varying combination, giving all the organisms whatever it needs to replicate. It is the code by which all information is stored. If you like, we could call it the, I can call it the hard drive that contains the necessary data for the organism to know what to do. So things like eye color, curling tongue, skin tone, muscles, nervous systems, bones, it's all written in that strand of DNA. It is wound up inside the nucleus of the cell, which is so small you can't see it with your naked eyes. Yet when stretched, listen to this, one DNA strand is 2 meters long. Wow, 2 meters long. That means about that long. That's one strand wrapped up inside the cell, you can't even see it. There are so many other eye-popping facts about DNA that extend beyond what I'm telling you, okay? So what's the dilemma now? So if DNA is that complex and powerful, what is the dilemma? Listen to the dilemma. There is an age-old challenge in this branch of science concerning DNA and RNA. Overly simplified, RNA is the substance that helps to decipher the DNA. So if we had to use an example, this is DNA, this is RNA. RNA is the decoder. RNA is the system that reads the DNA. Are you seeing where I'm going? Okay. So overly simplified, this RNA deciphers the DNA and decodes it in order to determine the message and then generate the means by which the cells are created of that thing. Now, the question is, how does RNA read itself? I hope you're following. How does RNA read itself? If encoded information has to be decoded, where did the first RNA that began the process of decoding come from? How could it come into existence if it too had to be decoded? You see, ladies and gentlemen, the RNA-DNA debacle is what we call the chicken and egg dilemma. It's one of my favorite arguments because for me, in fact, for me, it's the most powerful because it's the one that really locks everybody up. Okay, you have a reader. Let's take this argument further. This thing reads everything that I put under it, okay? This thing has information which comes from this. So if this is what I need to read to make this, then where did the first thing that read this come from? And I'm telling you that's it. That's the end of your argument because the information to make this is coming from this thing, and this is read by this. So how does this thing pass and read if there's no information to make this? That's why for me, the arguments become really senselessly annoying because the truth is you can't have an egg without a chicken. And the truth is you can't have a chicken without an egg. And that's why we who believe in creation believe that the first ones had to be created. Simple. That's how you end the discussion. God created a chicken first, and it was created as an adult already. That's another part that a lot of people don't get here. So it's not like God created and then there were little babies and then they had to be nursed into growing. No, when God created everything, he created them as adults with an apparent state of aging. For me, it's one of the biggest arguments I also love to use when it comes to explaining the apparent age of the universe. Because there's a lot of people say, no, but paleontology, light studies, and astronomy are showing us that the Earth is 3 billion years old. The universe is 15 billion years old. But I can show you in scripture where God performed 2 examples of aging instantaneously. And the first one is creation. When God created things, he didn't create them as babies, he created them as adults already. So they already had the apparent state of aging. So meaning when the earth was created, it had the apparent state of aging. When animals were created, every form of animal, it was created already aged as an adult. When humans were created, they were created already as an adult. That's why the chickens came first. Simple. In creations, the chickens came first. And then the chickens laid eggs because God said, I am putting within every creature seed that bears after its kind. So within every creature, including us humans, is seed that can bear after its kind. So every creature on earth, whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal, has within it seed for its own production. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Not only is there seed for your own production, there's seed after its kind. So God took genetics to a whole other level. That's why you don't have lions that can intermix with rabbits. That can't happen because they belong to two totally different genuses, if you like, or genetic lines of dissension. So meaning there is no mix between the two, and because there is no mix between two, that's just how it is. So the idea of RNA and DNA is the classic argument of the century. The chicken or the egg, which came first? RNA, you cannot have DNA deciphered without RNA existing. You cannot have RNA existing if there's no DNA to give the code to create the RNA. That, my friends, is what my good friend Simon Wansalane would say, boom. So in short, what I'm telling you is that for me, that argument, you can take any atheist any day. This one, they'll have no answers for it. So what I'm going to do, let me stop here because we still have another set of items which are debacles. Let me just write here, continue here. I'm just putting a bookmark on my notes. I want to stop here because I think I've come to the most powerful argument of the entire discussion for today, and that is the RNA and the DNA argument, because for me, that sums up the absurdity of the evolutionary argument. The absurdity of the evolutionary argument. That's why we who are creationists admit that something created them. They can't just appear. Something created them. And so if they were created by something, then that thing had to be intelligent. That thing had to have the capacity to think and plan. That thing had to have the ability to work with what we call in our industry or in our circles, purpose of design. Purpose of design is one of the most powerful arguments I've ever come across in my life. What is purpose of design? If I take you back to the book of Genesis and I begin to show you, you will see that God never brought anything without first ensuring there was the environment for it to survive. Let me just quickly take you there and we'll close with that and then open for questions. So let's go quickly to Genesis, and then we're going to look at the account of creation. And you're going to be blown away by just how orderly this is. That's why for people like myself, I consider myself fairly intelligent. I'm not an idiot. I consider myself fairly knowledgeable. I'm not a blind follower. I consider myself a researcher and a scholar. I'm not a fool. And I have studied creation and I have studied evolution. I will tell you, it takes more faith to believe in evolution than it does in creation. Because if I wake up today and tell you this phone evolved over billions of years, and you know, for me, I always love what Kenneth Hovind used to say. He says, whenever evolutionaries cannot explain something, they bring fairy tales in the form of time. They tell you billions of years because they know you and I have no absolute means by which we can use scientific method to verify the truth of that. We were not there. So we just have to say billions of years. Now, just because we study evolution in small leaps and bounds within the confines of our current existence, based on those four things I demonstrated earlier, does not justify that everything came from nothing. That's a lie. So this phone didn't come from anywhere. Somebody created this phone. Someone created this phone. It didn't just appear from nowhere. And that for me is the ultimate argument. Let's go in here. Let me show you. So what's the first thing God does? He creates light. So what does this light do? This light separates the two existences of day and night. Okay, that's day one. Then day two, he created a firmament in the middle of the waters and divided the waters from the waters and made the firmament and divided the waters which were under from the ones on top. And then he called the firmament on top of heaven, and that was the second day. So he created a realm. Now, this is so interesting. So let's imagine if we began, God says, let there be light. What was there? For me, the ultimate proof of let there be light is Big Bang. And you know, when you study Big Bang, there are so many facts within the Big Bang which are amazing. Number one, infinite light. Okay, infinite light, because all this energy was concentrated in one point. So infinite energy. Time was within that, so infinite time. Non-existential, meaning not existing, okay? And then it started. Now, every scientist will call you mad when we talk about an effect without a cause. They'll say you're sick in the head. There are no effects that come without a cause. It doesn't happen. It's impossible. Every effect has a cause. There is something that brings it to be. So let's look at that. There is no way the Big Bang could happen without a cause. Now let's examine God. What is one of God's qualities? He is eternal. That means he's outside time. He is all present. That means he's outside of nature. All creation is actually physical. God is outside of that. So he exists. He's an interdimensional and cross-dimensional being. So he's beyond this dimension of space and time. Okay? And in the beginning, time, energy, and matter were all in one point in eternity, in absolute concentration, and it explodes by the word of God. Let there be light. Boom! Everything comes into existence. And forget about the stories of billions of years. It happened in an instant. Why? Because God transcends time itself. God lives outside of time. He's not bound by time. So he can do things in ways that are beyond even understanding and make and bring into existence the apparent state of aging like that. The Bible interestingly uses a very interesting term. It says, he who stretches the heavens like a tent. Science is now telling us that the universe is expanding, it's stretching. Every galaxy is moving further away from each other. That's interesting. The very substance of space or fabric is expanding. That's interesting. So if you point Hubble telescope in space right now to the furthest point in the universe, and you are going to see some galaxies rushing away from us at the speed of almost the speed of light. When you point that same point tomorrow, you won't see them anymore because they've gone beyond the reach of that telescope. So where are they going to? Simple. God is stretching space like a tent. It's so interesting the scriptures use that term. Google it and see for yourself, or do a search on your Bible. You will see it says stretches the heavens like a tent. So God is stretching the heavens. And Einstein and his brilliant set of scientists admitted that the fabric of space and time is stretching every day. And that's where they get the concept of the Big Bang, because it must have all come from one point of matter and existence, and then exploded to expand every day. Very, very interesting concept. But for me, what's even more interesting, let's finish this passage and I close. So he comes there, he separates the firmaments, and he creates a habitat, a biosphere, because that's what that is. So he takes the waters and he separates the water. So there's water on top, there's water underneath. So we have a biosphere. So meaning the environment there is very different from the environment in space, because space is virtually a vacuum. So this is totally different. Then verse 6 says, listen to this. He says, let there be a firmament. Oh, that's the one I just read. And then the third day, he says, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place and dry land appear. And it was so. Now watch what happened. So God first creates the water and then creates the land. Why does he do that? Because of what follows the next day. Then listen to this. Let the earth bring forth grass. So you see, grass could not exist if there first wasn't land. The herb that yields seed. So he creates herbs and he puts seed in them. And the fruit that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. So the earth first. So God always creates the environment first, then he puts the items. Okay, and then the Bible tells us the earth brought forth grass and herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, blah, blah, blah. Third day. Then fourth day, let there be light in the firmament of the heavens. I love this. To divide the day from the night, and let them be for a sign and a season, and for days and nights and years. And then let there be light in the firmament for the heavens to give light to the earth. And it was so. So watch. He brings these plants. Watch this. He brings these plants. And he realized that these plants are going to be food for the animals on day number 5. So he has to first create the earth on which the animals can walk. Then he has to create the plants which could feed off the earth. And then the light was still a light that was coming from the very presence of God. So he had to create a sun that now would function as a source of light. And then he had to separate day and night so that there could be cycles on the earth. Do you see how God plans? Nothing is accidental. Fifth day, what does he do? Let the waters abound with living creatures. So he does not create fish before first creating water. Then he does not create birds without first creating the firmament. And then what does he do? He then puts sea creatures, living things on the ground, and all these came with birds, and that was it. And then from there, then the next day now, on the same day, he goes on now to create creatures on the ground, cattle and creeping things, and they were able to feed off the plants. Do you see that? So God is very orderly in his purpose of design. And finally, that's when, after he had created that entire environment, he then gets to a point where he says, let us now create man as the crown of it all. And once it does that, what does he do? He immediately now brings on the entire setup where man can rule over this. So you notice man has very unique features and abilities when he is created. So I'm going to stop here. We're going to pick it up next week because definitely we had a big problem with internet, and it's only the salvation of my daughter. My daughter came to a rescue, brought another provider, and we used that, and that's the one that has saved us. So we're going to stop here. Let me open it up. In case there's anybody out there who has a question, who wants to ask a question, please feel free. Let me quickly look at comments here. Internet worldwide is so unreliable. True D, thanks. Then Shahira, I never thought I would understand the chicken and egg dilemma. Well, there you go. You now do. So if you have any question, feel free to ask at the moment because we need to close this session for today. So any question, if you're on Zoom, simply raise your hand. I'll see your hand immediately. I'll allow you to speak. If you're on Facebook, you can type your question in the comment box. Okay, so any question, any query, anything that you want to find out, please feel free to do so now. Okay, so meantime, back to the chicken and egg. I always find the concept absolutely amazing. I've personally been very, very blessed when I learned this from a great man called Ravi Zachariah. He really did a great job with this. So my brother Chenda here, please go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask your question or comment. So Chenda, please go ahead. Okay, there you go.
Hello, thank you, Reverend.
You can go ahead, Chenda.
The insight. Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you for the insight.
Yes, very well.
Lesson. Yes, and I followed it from last week. I just wanted to clarify your clarification rather, because I've heard elsewhere, though not necessarily authoritative studies, just assumption that the 6 days in which God created the earth and all the creatures could actually necessarily not be 6 days, because elsewhere the Bible says that a day is as 1,000 with God. So with that explanation, then they also bring in the aspect of justifying the thousand, I mean the millions or billions of years that the earth has been in existence, that, you know. So even if we narrow it to just the 6 ordinary days, maybe that's not the way it was in reality. I don't know what your take is on that.
No, very good point, Chanda. It's actually called the gap theory. Thank you for bringing it up, Mr. Penda. There is those of us who actually believe in the literal 6 days. I'm one of those. And I'll tell you why. You know, God has the ability to, first of all, there's 2 very powerful attributes about God. Number one, he exists outside space and time. So he's at the end, the middle, and the beginning at the same time. His concept and comprehension of time is way beyond where we are. You and I, we experience time in a linear, ever-present state of existence. We move we're in the ever-present, but from the past into the future in the ever-present. So our experience of time is ever-present now, but it's always linear. It always goes forward, it never goes backwards. With God, he is outside of space-time. And so because he's outside of space-time, he does not experience time the way you and I do. He sees the past, present, and future simultaneously, and either one of these can be jumped in and out of at will. That's number one. So which means when the Bible says that a day is as 1,000 years, God has the ability to slow that time down to a complete standstill, take it backwards, and he even has the ability to go forward, and he can speed time at super speed, and he can take it at whatever level. He's almost like, what's that character in the DC comics? The Watcher character, I've just forgotten his name. Oh, anyway, in Marvel, it's literally Doctor Strange. So very similar to Doctor Strange. Of course, those are just, Marvel character comical, comics and ideas. So they are nothing with reality. But it's a very interesting concept to imagine, because Doctor Strange has the ability to manipulate the very fabric of space and time. And so, in a way, God has the capacity to manipulate the very fabric of space and time. And because of that, he can literally create in 6 literal days. Why? Because for him, he can make the entire process happen in what may look like an instant. But the truth is, it is beyond that. And one of my favorite examples has got to be the story of the wine. The Bible tells us that the first miracle Jesus did was he turned water into wine. It's so interesting when you follow that story. There's a number of my colleagues in the church who say, no, it was grape wine, grape juice. I don't know where they get that idea from, because it's a ridiculous one. The Jewish people drink wine, and it's a known fact. So the Bible teaches us that he actually created this wine and told them to take a sample to the MC, to the master of ceremonies. And when the director of programs drank the wine, he was stunned. He said, this is absolutely amazing wine. Normally, what people do in feasts like this is they start by giving you the good wine. And then as you get drunk, they start bringing the cheap wine. But in this event, what has happened is the best wine has been brought later. Now that's interesting. You and I who understand wine realize that wine is made by fermentation. Fermentation takes time. Are you seeing my point? Fermentation takes time. In other words, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of maturing is what makes that wine or alcohol very rich. So the longer it is matured, the finer and better it is. Now here's Jesus. He just speaks a word, and instantly the wine is fermented to 15, 20 years and refined. Now that's interesting. For me, when I came across that story, I said, whoa. So that proves that even geological formations on the earth and all these different events could have happened in an instant, because he is God. Remember, he's the creator of the very fabric of space and time itself. He can manipulate it at a microcosmic level, at quanta level, at quark level, at beta alpha particle level. He can go to a point where he hits the non-locality of these substances at quantum level. Now, can you imagine if God can manipulate things at quantum level, the implications of what God can do with as far as creation is concerned? For me, it's amazing. So to think of a literal 6 days is no longer an impossibility, because we're talking about a God that can manipulate nature at microcosmic level, just as much as he can at macrocosmic level. The distances between planets and star systems, which are billions and billions of light years, an impossibility to even imagine. Even if you sit to try and picture the size of the universe, we can't picture it with our minds. It's almost impossible. We can't even picture it. But this vast expanse of the universe, the question is, why so much waste? But yet God does it. It's there. So, and it's not accidental. Every planet, every sun, every star system is going about in a very orderly, calculatable way. That's why astronomers can calculate to the second on events that will occur. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no way things like that happen out of the blue. There is an order to the entire creation. It's very orderly, which gives us an idea of the mind of the creator. So, Professor Chanda, in short, what I'm saying, I believe totally in the literal 6 days creation. I believe totally the fact that God has the ability to do so. And many will argue and say, no, come on, it's not possible, because even radiocarbon dating is showing 15,000 years, 30, 40, 50,000 years. Come on, haven't you ever heard of isotope decay? False positives? These are things that are highly arguable and provable in the scientific circles. So what I'm telling you is that God is able to do it. And the issue of dinosaurs, the issue of fossils, we'll tackle that in another topic. I will show you exactly, according to what I've learned from many great Christian minds who are respected scientists, exactly where those come from. But that's a really good point you raised there, Chanda. Let me check here. Rabbi Zulu, it is right to continue to try and align creation according to scripture and how the world was conceived according to science, given the many differences in the two time frames. I don't know what it means. I'm asking because I noticed you quoted Sir Einstein. Yes, Sir Einstein was one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. And he made a very interesting statement. He said, gentlemen, God does not play dice. He did his own studies and he came to a conclusion that there's an intelligent life that put this whole system together. Especially when you start to study the law of relativity, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, and when you start to study quantum physics, you realize that there are too many strange things going on at that level for you to think that this is all evolution. Cannot be. There has to be an order and a creator. That's why for a number of agnostics, they have started embracing what we call the alien theory. And I'll get into that when we study humanism, when we study the great deceptions in future topics. I will show you the alien theory. It is believed amongst a growing sizable community that we humans were the result of genetic experiment between the gods and the apes that existed on the earth before. So earth is actually the ground of a continuing work being carried out by superior beings who've kept themselves completely hidden, and they work behind the scenes and they are manipulating. And they teach that all these things we talk about in ancient books like the Bible are all just the activity of super alien spacemen that have come to manipulate mankind.